This is another far-left partisan judge who was smacked down by the Supreme Court in July for ruling on this exact same thing. In May, this judge tried to say that the President of the United States does not have the executive authority to hire and fire in the executive branch.
That's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt criticizing a federal judge for blocking President Trump's layoffs during the government shutdown, adding that the White House plans to appeal. For more on this, let's bring in former Trump economic advisor and Heritage Foundation senior visiting fellow Steve Moore. You know, Steve, for decades, administrations have been basically told that it was practically impossible to fire a federal employee unless they had done something egregious. President this term has put that on its head. Do you think eventually this will be validated by the Supreme Court?
Well, I sure hope so, Rich, because we need to downsize the federal government. I mean, let's face it, one of the reasons that Donald Trump won this election was his very popular promise to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. If you look at what happened under the Biden administration, yeah, we created a lot of jobs, but guess what, Rich? They were all in Washington, D.C. A huge number of them were growing the government. So what we want to do is shrink the government workforce and grow the private sector economy. And to a large extent, that's what's happening right now. But this will go to the courts. I believe the president, as you just said, is the head of the executive branch. He's essentially the CEO of the government, and he should have the ability to reduce workers that are not needed.
As the administration tests these boundaries and they are getting validated, or at least they're not getting struck down immediately by courts, is there concern among conservatives that in another several years you're going to have a Democratic president in there who's going to start cutting ICE and cutting all the types of things in the federal government they may disagree with?
Well, listen, I mean, we need to make cuts everywhere in government right now because the government has grown so quickly. And, you know, let's face it, we're running a $2 trillion a year deficit. That is a clear and present danger. I mean, as I look at the American economy going forward, Rich, as an economist, I would say our greatest danger right now is this massive debt and out of control government spending. So it is a national emergency that we bring down the amount of government spending. And I think the president has the authority to do it.
And when you look at the spending side, too, we've been talking about this I started the Fox business about 18 years ago, and you and I were talking about this back then. It was the entitlement tsunami that was coming. I mean, we're in it now. So how much time does Congress have to get on that?
Well, so the big dispute over the shutdown, as you know, Rich, is over whether we can make some very, very modest, tiny cuts in these explosively growing government spending programs, including, of course, Medicare and Medicaid and Obamacare. And incidentally, you know, if you look back when we passed Obamacare 15 years ago, remember, that was called the Affordable Care Act. It was supposed to reduce the cost of health care, and all we've seen is an explosion of costs. So one of the things we've learned is Obamacare was one of the biggest fraudulent programs ever. But I'll say this, I don't like to see the government shut down. I'm here in Washington, D.C. The parks are closed. You're seeing, you know, disruptions in flights and so on, because I travel a lot, I know, as you do. But the fact is, the worst outcome right now would be if the Republicans just cave in to Chucky Schumer and say, okay, we're going to restore all of these spending cuts. There's $2 trillion of spending cuts in the Republican budget over 10 years out of $80 trillion of spending. So that's like a 2% cut. If we can't do that, we're doomed, because we have to cut a lot more than that over the next 10 years to bring our budget back in balance.
And now, as the administration has laid off most of the employees, USAID, Department of Education, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Russ Vought, the head of the budget office, says that they're going to move to get rid of the CFPB entirely. Do you think that the government has the power to get rid of constitutional or congressionally created entities like that?
Well, I think, listen, the old saying is that the Congress legislates and the executive branch is the one that has the authority of how the government is actually run. So, yes, I do believe the president has the authority to cut wasteful programs. You know, for the first 150 years of this country, the president had what was called impoundment power, Rich. And that was where the government, just like any CEO of a company, said, if we don't need to spend the money, we're not going to do it. And so right now, the rules in Washington are, even if we don't need to spend the money, we should spend it. That's outrageous. No company could ever make a profit given those kind of rules. So I think the president does have the authority to impound funds if there's no longer a national interest in spending it.
There's also a story out of the Wall Street Journal saying that the administration is planning an IRS overhaul that would make it easier to pursue left-leaning groups. Now, I remember all the Lois Lerner hearings that we had a decade ago. Isn't that essentially just the flip side of that with a different party?
Well, the politicization of the IRS and the State Department and the Justice Department and the FBI is one of the great scandals of the last 4 or 5 years, what we saw under Biden. I don't want to see either party using the IRS for political reasons, Rich. I think it's wrong. If we had a simplified tax system, by the way, as you know, Rich, you and I have known each other a long time. I favor a flat tax, very simple, very straightforward. People know how much they owe, they pay it. It's not like reading Greek to figure out how much you owe on the tax forms. That would reduce IRS fraud more than anything else. It just simplified the system so people know that it's understandable and they know how much they owe.
All right. Steve Moore live for us today. Steve, thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Rich. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.